All right. So happy to be here. Welcome, everybody, to the Canadian Bro Show. My name is Paul Bale, and I am the founder and host and producer, whatever you want to call me, of the Canadian Bro Show. And I am live from Kelowna in the Okanagan Valley, about 4 hours from Vancouver. And I'm so excited. I'm going to bring in my great co-host, Mr. John Leister. And John, say hello. How you doing?
Hello, how you doing? Good to see you again, Pauly. Good to be back. We had a
Good.
little technical difficulty, but that's the way life
Yes.
goes sometimes.
Well, in our case, more often than not,
Yeah,
as
well, you
we're
just got to
learning.
suck it up
Yeah, we're
and
learning.
move
It's
forward.
it's a, it's all good. We're learning. And
Right.
today's episode 16, believe it or not, Johnny,
Sweet
we're going to be
16.
we're yeah, incredible, eh?
Yeah.
We're going to be doing our version of Siskel and Ebert, which is the Canadian version, which we really are fond of doing. We're both film buffs. We both love movies, cinema, whatever you'd like to call it. And today, episode 16, we are celebrating one of my favorite genres
Hmm.
is our favorite horror movies.
Very
Ooh,
timely
yeah.
since it's October. It's the Great
Yeah.
Pumpkin, Charlie Brown.
Yeah, buddy. I got a couple of pumpkins in my front door. I'm going to have some pumpkin soup after Halloween.
Okay, nice.
And so how are things since I saw you last week, Johnny? How are things going in Vancouver?
Pretty routine. Nothing spectacular to report. I'm uploading another Lee Hackland today. This one's called the One Way Hospital. This is not a hospital you want to stay at, particularly if you're of a specific faith, because dollars to donuts, you won't come out. But fret not, my boy Lee puts the villains in their place as he tends to do. So that was my week. How was your week?
It sounds riveting. Lee
Yeah,
Hacklin is one badass mofo.
he is. He takes care of business.
Yeah, absolutely. My week
He's
is
my
pretty good.
avatar.
It seems like at this stage in life, the weeks just blow by at an
Oh,
accelerated late rate.
boy, do they ever.
You
It's
too?
crazy.
It's
Oh,
not just me.
it's the older we get, our perception of time just when we're kids and we're staring at the clock. We're
Mm.
sitting in chemistry 11, and every second is ticking by on the analog clock like 5 hours, and you just
Yeah.
can't wait for that 3 o'clock bell to ring. And now it's just the polar opposite. It's like slow down, time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, totally. I'm just going to put this into a larger screen there. It's so we can actually see us. And that is so true. And at the end of the day, stop thinking about time going by so fast, and it won't. Um, and Yeah, so mine's been pretty good. I'm up in Kelowna. The weather's been actually quite nice so far in October. It's been very sunny. Temperatures dropped quite a bit, so you can feel the colder air coming in. But for the most
Yeah,
part, it's
same in Vancouver. It's cold and rainy.
yeah. Well,
Or
you're getting
typical
that. You're getting blasted by that atmospheric thing that's coming in from up in Alaska and down the coast. You get soaked. We're getting a little bit of it as well. It's rained 3 days here, but anytime it rains in Kelowna, it's good because it doesn't rain as much as Vancouver. Thank goodness. One of the reasons why I like Kelowna. Yeah. So to start off with, we're gonna who'd like to go first this time? I can't remember.
I went first last time,
Did you?
so
Okay.
why don't you take the floor, Mr.
Excellent.
Paul?
Well, with horror film, I mean, what does horror, with the horror film genre, what does it mean to you, Johnny? Before we get into it,
Again, it's just a vicarious thrill, sort of being in that situation that we don't want to be in, where we're hunted by someone or we're stalked by someone, and we ask ourselves, well, what would we do? What would we do if someone actually tried to kill us, whether it's Jason Voorhees or a werewolf? Would we crawl into the fetal position and start sucking our thumbs and beg for mercy,
hell no.
or would we fight back? And it's always, again, it's always very uplifting when you see someone who's not necessarily a Navy SEAL or a quote unquote action hero, just a regular Joe or a regular Jane faced with a life and death situation, and to see them step up to the plate like Jamie Lee Curtis with the coat hanger in Halloween,
Oh yeah, I would
right?
imagine. I
Which
would
actually
imagine,
fights back.
and I have a strange feeling Halloween's going to be on your list.
Might be,
Um, yeah,
might not be.
my
How about
my
you?
I just love horror films. I love to be scared. I don't really get scared very much unless it's just amazing. And it just remind me of one film that I forgot to put on, but I think we'll do. I'll add that at a future time. But I love all kinds of horror. And my first one I'll start off with is one of my favorite vampire horror films.
Mm.
And not a lot of people talk about this film. I don't know why. I absolutely love it, of course, and I've seen it well over a dozen times. And I'll just give you a little blurb on it. First, I'll tell you the name. It's called 30 Days of Night.
Oh, right. I forgot about that
And
one. That's
yeah,
good.
it's an
That's good
extreme
movie.
vampire horror,
Yeah,
eh?
that's a good one.
And I'll give you a little synopsis here. In the far northern hemisphere, the small town of Barrow, Alaska, experiences a solid month of darkness every year. Though most of the residents head south for the winter, some townspeople, rather stupid, remain behind. However, those that stay regret their decision when one year a boat of hungry vampires comes out of the mist and lands in Barrow at the start of the 30 days of a darkness, and is led by the electrifying and horrifically talented Danny Houston. And they and his hungry vampires descend on Barrow to feed.
Wow. Scary kid.
Sh- Chef Eben, Josh Hartnett, who does a pretty good job in this, and his wife, Melissa George, never to be seen after this movie,
Uh,
and a dwindling band of survivors must try to last until dawn breaks over the barrel's month long twilight.
wow. That is a.
This
I do barely remember it, but I have seen it, and I remember really enjoying it. It's
it
really,
is it is
really,
graphic,
yeah.
horrific. What a great idea of being stuck in a desolate place in northern reaches of the hemisphere of North America, and 30 days of darkness and hungry vampires come and
Wow.
take over you. I mean,
Is that Robert Rodriguez? Was he the director? No.
actually, no.
Oh.
That's a good guess, though. David Slade.
Oh. Oh.
And he actually they won the Saturn Award for the best horror film,
Oh,
amongst
nice.
amongst others. It's really well done, and a lot of people don't talk about it, but it's you have to just get into it. I've seen it
Yeah.
so many times. It's just a survival horror story, and the
Right.
vampires are absolutely just horrific, evil, bloodthirsty,
Yeah.
and the acting is really incredible. It's a great film. Great film.
Okay. Cool. Good choice.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Well, I was going to start with another vampire movie, but maybe I'll save it for later. So I'll go with the Blair Witch Project,
Ah,
1999. This was a
yeah.
huge sensation back in the day. Everyone was talking about it. We made by a couple of film students, Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez,
Yep.
and basically three college students, film students, that go out into the woods of Burkittsville, Maryland, to make a documentary about the mythical Blair Witch. They wind up getting lost, and the whole movie is shot like a documentary. And some people went to this movie thinking it was for real. I don't know why. It ends with the credits written and directed by. But I found this movie to be absolutely engaging from beginning to end. Again, there's a lot of stuff that's sort of implied with the stick figures hanging from the trees,
Yeah.
and then when they're running through the woods, and then they find the house. I remember when Mike has the camera and he sees the house, and they're looking for Josh, who's been taken by whoever's hunting them, presumably the witch. And I just remember my stomach just fell, and Heather running down the stairs. The whole movie feels absolutely real. The idea is that they made these recordings, they made these videotapes, and that because they were lost and they were never to be found. And then someone found the tapes and they cobbled the footage together and they made this documentary. But of course, it's really a mockumentary. And I
Yeah.
absolutely love this movie. And my heart broke for these kids. They're just trying to make a student film, and they wind up way over their heads. And I just find it to be absolutely gripping from the beginning to end. And no music. There's no music in this movie, and it feels absolutely real. And the wonderful moment where Heather looks into the camera and she's like, "I love you, Mom. I love you, Dad," and you
Mm.
just know that their fates are essentially sealed.
Yeah.
I love this movie. I've seen it
Yeah,
many times.
me too. It really captured the imagination,
Yeah, I
and
think it inspired a lot of people to make movies too.
well, especially with the budget they did and how
Yeah,
much money they made, and
$7,000, I think,
yeah,
of
just
their own money.
incredible.
Yeah.
And by the way, one of my favorite horror writers, Stephen King, it's one of his favorite movies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was going to actually add Stephen King to a couple, but we only have a certain amount of time, and I
Right.
just made sure I had 12, just in case you stole a couple of mine. But I left that one because I had a
You
feeling you're
moved
going to
it.
do that.
Okay.
I know you well, and it's a great film and a good choice.
Thank you.
My next one is one of my favorite franchise horror. This one was the very first, and it was spine tingling,
Mm.
and it's called Hellraiser.
Oh, right.
Hellraiser.
Pinhead.
Pinhead. And let me give you a little bit for those that don't know. Now they made about 6 movies on this, maybe
Oh,
more,
yeah.
and none of them are as good as this. This is just a crazy film, and I'll just give you a little blurb. The overall plot of the franchise focuses on a puzzle box, the Lamont configuration.
Mm.
It opens a gateway to a hell like realm of the Cenobite life forms. The Cenobites are the order of former humans who have become monsters who harvest human souls to torture in their sadistic experiments. Holy crap.
You need to be a trailer narrator,
I'm
especially
telling
when
you,
you
I
you
could,
say
could
that.
could
You
do a
kill
little
it.
of that on the side.
Yeah,
So
yeah, good.
the lead guy is Sean Chapman, and they call him a sexual deviant Frank. That's the character. Inadvertently opens a portal to hell where he tinkers with the box he bought while abroad on vacation. The act unleashes gruesome beings called Cenobites who tear Frank's body apart, quite literally.
I remember that scene, and I
Oh
just
my
about threw up. Yeah, one of the
God.
goriest scenes of all time. It's something I wish
Peop
I could erase from my mind.
I'm telling you, people were leaving. I saw this at the
Yeah,
Capitol 6. People were leaving right from the beginning of this movie. And it actually got banned
yeah,
after a while because
yeah,
people were so taken aback by.
yeah. That was a
Um,
little over the top for me.
yeah, so as they were ripping Frank's body apart, when Frank's brother, Andrew Robinson, and his wife, Claire Higgins, move into Frank's old house, not a good idea.
Mm.
They accidentally bring what is left of Frank back to life somehow. I can't remember how. Obviously, it was something to do with the lament configuration. This magical
Stitch
box.
them back together.
Yeah, and then all hell breaks loose, and it is just unbelievable. Pinhead. They call him Pinhead
Right, right.
because he had pins all over, and it was just his
Quite, quite,
voice.
quite the masochist,
Oh,
apparently.
oh yeah, absolutely. Just devoid of any charm or warmth.
Humanity, right?
Yeah, just an evil, dark, twisted.
Mm.
Wow. If you want to go back, 1987. This was way ahead of its time, and I think it's a 10 out of 10. It is very scary, and I won't be watching it again for quite some time.
No, me either. Clive Barker, I think, was the
I,
director.
I was just going to say that, and that's why I chose it because I've read quite a few of Clive
Oh, really?
Barker's books.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
The
and
British
I
Museum.
got into a Clive Barker vibe there for a couple of years,
Yeah.
and then I started to find myself descending into the heart of darkness, and
Okay.
I immediately had to change my tune and get to church and start reading the Bible and
There
positive
you go.
things and the Reader's Digest and anything to not get the vision of Pinhead and him visiting me at 3 o'clock in the morning, sitting on my bed, ready to, just unbelievable.
Just keep telling yourself it's only a movie.
Oh, it was such a good movie. It was very
Mm,
scary. Who
okay.
do you got? What do you got
Okay,
next,
I'm
Johnny?
going to go with since you mentioned Stephen King, I'll
Yeah,
dive into Christine,
sure. Ah,
1983,
yeah,
based on the great novel by Stephen King, which I read back in the day.
yeah.
And Arnie, what's his name? Keith Gordon, who plays Arnie the nerd. He buys his first car, and little does he know that the car is possessed by the evil soul of the owner. And the more he drives the car, the more Arnie becomes more self-confident, but not in a good way. And I love the friendship between him and Dennis, played by John Stockwell. And I look at these two guys as a little bit like you and me, how the way we were in high school. you were the jock, you were the BMOC. I know you don't like to hear that, but that was my perception of you. And then I was the nerd.
What's a BMS? What's a BMSOC or whatever?
BMOC is big man on campus,
Oh,
bro.
fuck.
and
Okay.
and yet you and I had a very unlikely friendship back in the day, which continues to
Mm.
today, thank goodness. And
Yeah.
then I love that Dennis sticks up for Arnie, against the bullies.
Yeah.
And Alexander Paul plays Arnie's beautiful girlfriend. They have a very tragic. It's a very tragic love story, and of course, the love story is really about a boy in his first car. And the
Right.
movie is directed by John Carpenter, who also did the amazing film score. John Carpenter was also a great film composer as well as
Absolutely.
great Grand continues to be a great
Absolutely.
writer and director.
Big
I,
fan of John
yeah,
Carpenter.
this movie is really fun. It's a bit of a wish fulfillment, because Arnie uses Christine to get back at the bullies who are
Nice.
tormenting him. And I
Yeah.
love how the car reforms itself. Like it
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
be destroyed.
Yeah.
It's like it just can't. It's like Wolverine. You can't kill
Yeah.
Wolverine, and you can't kill Christine. So
Yeah.
that's my next choice. It's a
Well,
really
the
fun movie.
producers in Hollywood don't want to kill Wolverine because it's
Yeah,
just such a cash flow, you know?
yeah,
That's a great movie.
yeah.
I've read the book. I saw the movie. I didn't think the movie was as good as the book, but then what movies really are. Stephen King books
I
are
think one
really
complements the other. That's what I
very
look
much
at.
so. Very much
Yeah.
so. Good point. And I'm going to go into one of my favorite horror movies, and also turned into a franchise. Mr. Sam Raimi did the original Evil Dead.
Oh, right, right.
And let me just read this because I'm a huge fan of Bruce Campbell. Ash Williams, Bruce Campbell. His girlfriend and three pals hike into the woods to a cabin for a fun night away. Well, you already know that is not going to be a fun night away. It's going to
Not a
be an
good idea.
absolute no. It's going to be a
You
bloodbath.
should have stayed home.
And there they find an old book, the Necrominicon, whose text reawakens the
Mm,
dead when read aloud. The friends inadvertently release a flood of evil and must fight for their lives
the Deadites.
or become one of the evil dead.
Mm,
Ass watches his friends become possessed, and they must make a difficult decision before daybreak to save his own life in this, the first of Sam Raimi's trilogy.
right. It's
And
one of the
Bruce
wildest
Campbell,
movies ever made.
I mean,
Yeah,
wow.
it's
Just
balls to
a
the wall. And
just a
Sam Raimi was
crazy.
19 when he directed it.
Yeah, well, I didn't know that. I knew it
Yeah,
was one of his first
yeah,
ones,
yeah.
and what a way to blow up your career because, I mean, low budget, not a
He just
huge
he just
cast.
he just knocked on doors. He went to his
Yep.
dentist and said, "Hey, can you throw in a couple of $100 so I can get this movie made?"
Yeah, it's incredible,
It
eh?
can be done. It can happen.
And Bruce Campbell, of course, his facial expressions
Yeah, he's very funny.
yeah,
He's
but
very comedic.
he reminds me of your lead Lee Hacklin kind of. He has that that sort of that look, square jawed,
Yeah,
very expressive eyes, thin nose. I mean, he was perfect in that,
yeah.
and I just think it's just an absolute classic, and I
It
love it.
is.
And
It
if you
is.
haven't seen it, please rent it, watch it, stream it. It is fantastic.
Yeah, it's relentless.
Yeah. What
It's
do you
just
got?
one
What's yours,
crazy
Johnny?
visual after another. Okay, I'm going to go with Jaws, 1975, based on the
Nice.
book by Peter Benchley, directed
Yes.
by Steven Spielberg, one of the
Yes.
greatest movies of all time. It's a horror movie, but I also feel like it's an adventure movie. Robert Shaw as Quint, who's the shark hunter, and he has one of the most amazing monologues of all time, written by John Milius, where he talks about serving during World War II, and
Yeah.
he's on a destroyer, and it's
Yeah.
sunk, and his fellow officers are actually eaten by sharks. Jaws is just one of the most insanely entertaining movies of all time, and a lot of jump scares in this movie.
Yeah.
And the book actually has a subplot. In the movie, the mayor doesn't want to close the beach, even though there's all this evidence to indicate that there's a shark in the water. It's like, no, no, no,
Mhm.
we can't close the beach. The book actually explains that. The
Yeah.
reason is that the mayor is in the pockets of the mob. The beach is actually owned by the mob. And
Right.
they're telling him, no, 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 it's tourist season. This is making us money. You got to, we don't care if there's 100 sharks in the water. You got to keep
Yeah.
the beach open. So if you have seen the movie and you haven't read the book by Peter Benchley, I highly recommend it because
Yeah.
you get more. It's basically the same story, but you get a little more nuance. I
Yeah,
mean, music
absolutely.
by
And
John Williams. So
Roy
it does. Yeah, he's
Schneider,
so great, and Richard
he was the
Dreyfuss
lead in that. Yeah,
as Cooper.
and Jacqueline Bisset,
Mm.
she was in that for the bathing shots.
Yeah,
And what a great film. And I didn't go swimming for a long time. I just
I
went in
think a
kids
lot of
pool
people.
instead of the ocean.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were skittish about going into the water after seeing that movie.
Well, it was
I
the old
think the
kids pool
ocean's a little.
too. The old
Yeah,
kids pool was black. It was
yeah,
seawater, and there's no filter. So I remember
mm,
one time I was in there with Ryan
right.
Cadman, my old friend from Belfour Rentals, who went to kids as well, and we were there, and I felt something just brush by my calf,
Uh-oh.
and it scared the crap out of me, and it felt like it was a baby shark, and in fact it was. And I
Oh
just
my! In kids pool?
in kids pool, but it was a small
Wow.
shark. It was a baby shark, like it was. I don't know what type it was, but it was only a couple of feet long. But it did brush by me because the filters. There's no filters. It was just water from the ocean coming
Gosh,
in where you dived,
that's
and
crazy.
I got out and I sat on the steps of the little cement peninsulas where they used to have diving boards. And as I was sitting there, I noticed my legs were bleeding, and it wasn't because of this shark bit me. It was the leeches that were on the stairs of where I was sitting were
Okay, I'm not
feasting
much
on
of a
my
swimmer to
calf.
start with, but I think I'm done for the rest of my corporeal days because this story that I'm hearing is absolutely
That's a good one.
terrifying.
Hey, so my
But
next one is one of my favorite films. I had no idea this film. It started off really corny, and then it just completely changed. And I'm gonna go with my next one is Cabin in the Woods.
oh yeah, good one.
It
I've seen
is
it. Yeah,
just
that's wild.
extraordinary.
It's a bit like Evil Dead.
It starts off something else, and
Yeah,
it's like corny and simplified, and a bunch of horny teenagers going
yeah,
to a cabin in the woods, and all of that
unsupported.
stuff, and then it just changes and
Yeah,
turns and evolves, and it speeds up until the end. It's absolute pandemonium.
yeah.
I'll read the
Chris
thing here.
Hemsworth.
This is pretty cool. Cabin in the woods. When five college friends, Kristen Connolly, Chris Hemsworth, Anna Hutchinson,
Or
Fran Kranz, and Jesse Williams arrive at a remote cabin for a little vacation, a little time off, a little horny action.
mm,
Little do they expect the horrors that await them. One by one, of course, the youths fall victim to backwood zombies, if you want to call them. They were monsters, basically.
mm.
But there is another factor to play. Two scientists who are just brilliant in this, Bradley Winfield and Richard Jenkins, are manipulating the ghoulish goings ons.
Spoiler
Uh,
warning.
Spoiler warning, yes, and the body count rises, but I won't go
Yeah,
much more than that. And there is a lot more that meets the eye. This
mm.
movie is, you've seen it, obviously.
A long time ago. I think it was written by Joss Whedon, if I'm not mistaken,
You're correct.
who wrote the
And,
Avengers.
and, um, and it's really, it's just I mean, the last 20 minutes is absolutely
Yeah,
brilliant. It's
yeah.
completely the antithesis of how the movie starts off,
It's a real
but
roller coaster.
it really is
Out of
incredible,
control.
and
Yeah,
I just love it. All right, Johnny,
nice.
you're up, my man.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Blue Velvet, 1986, David Lynch, one of my favorite
Wow.
directors, also written by David Lynch. This movie is basically the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew go to hell. Kyle MacLachlan and Laura Dern are a couple of very sweet, innocent. They're like Archie and Betty. They're just the
Yeah,
most
yeah.
clean cut and sweet natured kids. And Kyle MacLachlan, he decides to spy on Isabella Rossellini and discovers that she's sort of caught in a very twisted and very sexualized relationship with Dennis Hopper, who plays Frank Booth. And Dennis
Yeah.
Hopper is just like the quintessential essence of evil in this movie. He's just
Oh, yeah.
completely out of control, and everybody is terrified of him. And of course, you remember the oxygen mask
Oh,
that he
God.
breathes through. Now, originally, it was supposed to be helium that he was
Yeah.
breathing. David Lynch
Yeah.
originally wanted him to have a helium voice, and Dennis Hopper actually talked him out of it. I don't know if that would have been a good choice or not. But I
Yeah.
remember seeing this movie in the Capitol Six back in the day, and a
Yeah.
lot of people walked out.
Oh, yeah.
It was just too much.
Too
But
dark. Yeah.
it is dark, but it has a sunny side too. and I love that about David Lynch's movies. And I don't know if you ever watched Twin Peaks back in the day,
Of
but
course.
oh, good. Maybe we should do an episode on David Lynch. I'd like to do that. But his movies are very surreal, very supernatural, but they also have a sweetness in their main characters, and that's what I love about his work. He really understands the essences of good and evil. And
Yeah.
Kyle MacLachlan's character is at the one extreme, and
Yeah.
Dennis Hopper, who's the id character, is
Yeah.
just at the very end. And it's just the movie's like it's like living in a nightmare for
Yeah.
2 hours.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
like
that's
when
how
it
good
ended,
directors.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
I
couldn't.
mean it.
I mean, David Lynch he's also a painter, and he just
Yeah.
creates like this alternate reality that sucks you in,
Yeah.
and you just like Mulholland Drive is another one, and you
Yeah.
just have to go with it. And some people
Yeah.
don't like it. He's like, oh, this is too much. It's
Yeah,
too
fair
weird.
enough. Fair enough. I mean, I don't like all this stuff, but he is very talented and a great director and a great visual.
Yeah.
Uh, you know,
And who else is in this movie? Brad Dourif, great
yeah,
cast.
oh yeah,
I'm
Brad.
trying to,
I've
I'm
got a
trying to
couple
think
of
of
horror films that
who
Brad
put
starred in.
Dean Stockwell.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Dean was great too. That's a
Yeah.
good choice. Good one.
His posture.
I'm going to go to probably when I saw this. I honestly at the time I think it was probably the best film I'd seen in a long time, and it is classically a horror film, but it's not gratuitous.
Mm.
And a lot of horror films like The Evil Dead and Cabin in the Woods and so many others where it's just blood, buckets of blood and gore and limbs and all kinds of crazy monsters. It's more of a psychological one, and it Silence of the Lambs.
Oh, okay.
And
Interesting.
Jodie Foster stars as um, Charisse Starling, a top student of the FBI Training Academy, and Jack Crawford, Scott Glenn, who I love,
Mm.
wants Clarice to interview Dr. Hannibal Lecter, Anthony Hopkins. Just incredible, incredible. I think he won the Academy Award for Best
Mm.
Actor in this.
Mhm.
A brilliant psychologist or psychiatric psychologist who is also a violent psychopath. Can you imagine? That's just brilliant.
Not a
Serving
good
life
combination.
Yeah. Serving life behind bars for the murder and cannibalism. He likes to eat his victims with a nice Chianti
Mm.
and a nice sort of veal jus, if you will.
Gross.
I don't know where that came from. Uh, and Crawford believes that Cannibal Lecter may have insight into the case,
Right.
and that Starling, as an attractive young woman, may be just the bait to draw him out. Well, this film was incredible. It was a 10 out of 10, and it
Mm.
was scary. It was revolting.
Mm.
It was borderline gross, and Hannibal Lecter and Jodie Foster, they both carry this film. It's
Yeah.
really
It's very
and
creepy.
it, I think they made 3. I think there's a
Yeah.
trilogy.
The Hannibal
Um,
Lecter character actually appears for the first time in a movie called Manhunter, which is directed by Michael Mann,
right.
starring William Peterson, and he's
Yeah,
played by
William Peterson, the guy with the
the,
biggest the
the bow leg,
bendiest bow legs in the
right.
history of film.
And
I remember
Hannibal
it.
Lecter, sorry, that's my psoriasis. Hannibal Lecter was played by Brian Cox, and I thought he was just as good as Anthony Hopkins.
Absolutely. And they also did a television series on Hannibal Lecter with
Oh, right.
Mads Mikkelsen.
Right, from Casino Royale.
Yeah, and he was just electrifying as well. I
Oh, you
mean,
watch that
great.
show?
Oh yeah.
So you see like the origin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I just love it all. I love it all, and and
Right,
and so he won Jonathan Demme was
right.
the yeah, and Anthony Hawkins won a Best Actor for leading role. Obviously, who do you got next, Johnny? I'm
Okay,
curious.
it does. I'm going to go with The Wicker Man,
Wow,
1973. Yeah, starring Edward Woodward, who was the Equalizer many
right?
years later. He plays a British detective sergeant who's been tasked to look for a missing girl on the island of Somerville in the UK, and he discovers that basically everyone who lives on this island is a
Excuse
crazy
me.
cultist led by Christopher Lee. This movie is really creepy, and the ending is absolutely gut wrenching. Have you seen this movie? I mean,
Yes,
and then they made a very silly remake many years later with Nicolas Cage.
terrible,
Yeah,
terrible. yeah. No,
But
but that
the Wicker Man is it's a bit like the Blair Witch Project in that
mm,
sense. It's
yeah,
just kind of yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no,
Anyway,
it had its niche and it was, it had impact and it was powerful for its run.
and very
And
dark ending. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Well, let's not talk about the
don't
ending because
want to spoil it.
we want people to not only enjoy the show and comment
Right.
about the show, and if you have any thoughts for shows in the future that film based that you would like us to do, any suggestions at all, just feel free to comment, like, and
Yeah.
subscribe at your
Interact.
own. We're not asking anybody to do anything, but to help us with the show, we certainly appreciate anything that you can help us with. I'm going to go into, if you will, a comedy horror.
Oh,
I know. I always like to throw in a comedy.
there you go.
It's
Purple.
so hard to do a horror genre that is specifically about werewolves, and it's also a comedy.
Oh, I know you're
And
going with this. It's on my
I,
list.
I oh, is it? That's why I wanted to get it out before you. This is American
Yeah,
Werewolf in London.
it's on my list.
Um, David Naughton, and Jack Griffin Dunne, who's really
Mm,
good in this,
yeah.
two American college students who are backpacking through Britain when a large wolf attacks them. David survives with a bite, but Jack is brutally killed and
Mm,
eaten. As David heads to the hospital, he's plagued by violent nightmares of his mutilated friend who visited him daily in all kinds of times and warns David that he is becoming a werewolf. Of
yeah.
course, David is
Not
like,
good news.
David is like, let me just wake up from this nightmare. This is just not happening.
Yeah.
And then when David discovers the horrible truth, he contemplates committing suicide before the next full moon causes him to
Mm.
transform from man to murderous beast. And by the way, the CGI in the this film was done in what, 1987?
Well, it wasn't CGI. It was done practically. It was actually
Right.
done. The
I forgot
transformation
about that.
was
Sorry
done on
for correcting me. Thank you.
way before CGI.
It,
One of the most stunning transformation sequences of all
it
time.
is. And
It makes
and
the whole
guess
movie.
and guess who was uh, the designer of all of these techniques? The same,
Stan Winston, was it
I
him?
believe so,
The
and it was
Terminator?
and he was the same dude that they got the technology from The Thing, John
No, right.
Carpenter's The Thing.
Yeah. Also
And
has very creepy
oh,
transformation. Lord,
Alien, yeah, oh my god. And anyways, it's supposed to be a
and
comedy, and
Blade, Blade
there's some
skin.
fun stuff in it, but I really like this movie, and I haven't seen it for a while, but it was very well done, and there was a few laughs. But
Yeah,
it's definitely a horror film, and it was
yeah.
for the werewolf genre, one of my favorites.
And Jenny Gutter was his love interest from Logan's
Oh
Run.
God, she was my love interest back
She
then.
was very easy on the eyes.
She was very easy on the eyes. Yeah, very attractive young lady,
One of my
British
earliest
too.
crushes. Oh yeah, great
Yeah, I
voice,
love
great
it.
everything. Okay,
All right,
cool.
Johnny, what you up? Well, you're up next, man.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Duel,
Wow,
1971. Steven
wow,
Spielberg's first movie, starring Dennis
wow.
Weaver as
Yeah,
a traveling salesman who is mild mannered and minding his own business, traveling along the highway, trying to sell whatever it is he's trying to sell, and
as you
he's
do.
relentlessly pursued by a mad trucker whom you never see. We never find out his identity. You never even see his face. You just see his beefy arm sticking out of the sticking, and
Yeah,
nobody's helping this poor Dennis Weaver character for whatever reason. He can't get into. I think he's on a payphone trying to call the sheriff
yeah,
at one point, and the truck just plows through the payphone. I
yeah.
mean, it's really and then maybe more of a suspense thriller than a horror movie, but sort of kind of. I mean, horrifying for that character to have that
It's a
experience.
horror movie. The guy that's driving
Yeah,
that truck is total
he
psychopath.
is.
You
And
know.
it's just like, oh God, worst case scenario, especially for someone who's driving and just doesn't have it in their mind's eye that such a thing could ever happen. Steven
Yeah,
Spielberg, I think, was all of 21 when he directed this movie.
yeah.
He
Incredible.
really cut his teeth on it. And it was
Yeah,
a TV movie, but it was released theatrically in Europe,
yeah.
according to Wikipedia.
Yeah, good choice, Johnny. I mean, I
Yeah,
really enjoyed it. It was, how do you make something as simple as a psychopath serial
yeah.
killer in an 18-wheeler? Try to
And he
make
just
that.
and he just picks on this one guy at random, this one poor
Yeah,
sucker,
and he's
right?
just relentless. Like, how does does he have satellite? There's no satellite back
Yeah,
then.
no.
Yeah. Anyways,
Talk about winning the lottery in reverse.
oh God, yeah. I'm going to go to because we are Canadian, and we like to say in our show all things Canadian. We try to talk about Canadian. Of course, it can't be all things Canadian, but Canada's a pretty big, second largest continent in the world. There's
Mm,
now 40 million people, so we really try to focus on Canadian because we love being Canadians.
we
We're
do.
very fortunate to live in Canada. We're very fortunate to live in. I live in Kelowna and Vancouver, and Johnny lives in Vancouver. We live two of the best places in the world, and we're blessed and humbled. And I got to throw it in. It's an amazing to be Canadian. And
It's
speaking
about
of
as close
Canadian,
to paradise as we're going to get in the real world. I
well,
think
the way that this
on
world is
on a,
going,
on a comparative scale.
it's really frightening out there right now. But let's get back to the show. And the
Mm.
next one is a Canadian director, one of my favorite Canadian directors, probably the best Canadian director in this genre. And this movie, he's done many, is Videodrome.
Oh, right.
David
Oh,
Cronenberg. And I'll just give you a little blurb on this.
mm.
As the president of a trashy TV channel, geez, that sounds like the fat, bloated orange guy down in South.
I think
Um,
I did.
Max Wren, James Woods, who's excellent in this, and a
Always.
total douchebag, not only in the movie, but apparently in real life as well, as he seems to like the fat, bloated orange guy for
Well,
some
different
reason.
strokes.
Yeah, I mean, whatever you want to call it, and is desperate for new programming to attract viewers. So when he happens upon Videodrome in a VHS tape, a TV show dedicated to gratuitous torture and punishment,
Mm.
Max sees a potential hit and broadcasts the show on his channel. However, after his girlfriend, who Deborah Harry is great in this,
Blondie.
auditions for the show and never returns, strangely enough.
Mm.
Max investigates the truth behind Videodrome, discovers the graphic violence may not be as fake as he thought. David Cronenberg puts his teeth into this. 1983, we graduated from
Wow.
Kitsilano
Feels like
Secondary.
yesterday.
I'm telling you. And it was
Time
a
flies.
Genie Award, which is Canadian, for those that
Right.
don't know, for
Canadian
best
Oscar.
achievement. Yeah, Genie Awards for best achievement in direction and best performance by an actress and a supporting role. And just you, you just if you haven't seen this movie, watch all of his movies and start from his earliest ones first, and then work your way down, and you'll see the brilliance
Yeah.
in this man's
Prepare yourself.
crazy mind.
Some of them are pretty gory.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's why I like him.
Very visceral.
It very visceral and
Mm.
and a classic horror, but psychological horror as well.
Mm. Right.
Anyways, I'm curious to hear yours, Johnny. What do you got
Okay.
next?
I got a couple more. I was going to start with a vampire movie, but you beat me to the punch. My next one is Dracula. Now, of course, there's been 8 million Dracula movies made, but my favorite is the
But
one
only
with.
three that are good.
Okay, well, the one my choice is the one from 1979, directed by John Badham and starring the legendary Frank Langella, Laurence
Wow,
Olivier as Van Helsing, and
wow,
I saw this movie in Concord, California, with my mother. It's a great film score by John Williams. I like to talk about music a lot because I feel music is just as important as any other aspect of a movie.
absolutely.
And Frank Langella is so wicked and charismatic, and you can see
Handsome.
completely, and his
Yeah.
voice his very gallant voice, and he's just you can I never drink wine. You can easily tell how pretty much any woman could be seduced by this character, even though he's pure evil.
And men.
Yeah, well, there you go. And so I'm not really a huge fan of the vampire genre, but when my mom took me to this movie, holy moly, I think she was holding my hand through half of it because I was just jumping down to my seat like every 10 minutes. It's a wonder I'm still alive. Have you seen it?
Yeah,
You've seen Dracula, right? 1979.
of
That's my
course.
favorite iteration of this character, I feel.
Yeah, yeah. I really enjoyed it. I love the vampire genre, but it's again, as you mentioned, very difficult to pull it off. And I can name three off the top of my head that are great, but I won't do that now. I will go into my next one. I'm just, you know, when it comes to relatives, as my uncle Reg used to tell me. Oh yes, Christian Bale. Yes, he's from Leicestershire, and he's from the Bale from Wales as well. I believe they were gypsies just like us. That's like Uncle Reg. Don't tell people that you're a gypsy. Okay, it's not good. And Uncle Reg would just he just stuff would fly out of his mouth. You'd never know if he was telling the truth. But he was adamant that Christian Bale was our distant cousin.
I can see
And
a slight resemblance for real.
yeah, except
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
a heck of a lot more talented and handsome and
Well,
older.
that goes without saying.
Uh, Come
That's
on,
a no.
it's
That's
like,
a no-brainer.
and Christian knows it. That's why he won't talk to me,
Because
because he's intimidated by my
he
brilliance, my talent, my looks,
if he saw
and
you walking down the street, he would cross to the other side. He's
he
like,
would completely ignore me. And this
you got to
movie,
face Chuck Norris than Paul Bale.
this 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 movie, what I love about Christian Bale is that he's a method actor, and he really gets into it, and sometimes even more than most people would ever consider. This is American Psycho.
Mm,
In American Psycho, he just is incredible in this. Talk about a horror film, a modern horror film. And in New York City in 1987, a handsome young urban professional, Patrick Bateman, Christian Bale, lives a second life as a gruesome serial killer by night. The cast is filled by Detective Willem Dafoe, one of my favorite actors,
oh,
and fiance Reese Witherspoon, very easy on the eyes,
yes.
and mistress Samantha Mathis. Remember her?
Oh, I
And
do.
co-worker, a
Pump
young
up the
Jared
volume.
Leto.
Oh,
What
wow.
was it? Yeah.
Pump up the volume with Samantha Mathis.
Oh
Okay.
yeah. And then the secretary, Chloe Sevigny.
Mm,
This is a biting, wry comedy, examining the elements that make a man a monster. And
mm.
what a fantastic, great book. I
Yeah,
read the
based on
book,
a novel. Oh, you did.
and Christian Bale, what he did with Bret Easton Ellis, I believe, is
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
the author, and the director was Mary Herron, and
Oh, really?
she did a fantastic job. And a lot of people don't give credit to female directors, but
Mm,
didn't really hear from very much of her after it. But wow, great
okay.
film, great film.
Right.
You enjoy it?
No, I haven't seen it.
Oh my God, Johnny, what's wrong with
Sorry.
you?
I'm,
Let's
raised by
go.
wolves.
Let's go. Who do you got? Who do
Okay,
you
I got
got?
a couple more. I'm going to go with another Stephen King adaptation, and this one is Misery, 1990, directed by Rob Reiner,
Yeah,
starring James Caan as best-selling novelist Paul Sheldon.
yeah,
He's just finished another book, and he's on his way to meet his agent. He gets into a car accident, and he's rescued by Annie Wilkes, played by the legendary Kathy Bates. And unfortunately for Paul, she turns out to be a very obsessive fan who holds him captive.
right.
And this is a very darkly funny movie,
Yeah,
very terrifying. Again, it's a bit like Duel. This everyman kind of character is just living his life and unfortunately crosses paths with this complete psycho and is completely in control of this person and like there's no help coming. And
yeah,
so Misery the book is great.
yeah,
Definitely want to read it again. And of course, Paul is a writer of a woman's romance series called Misery, and in
yeah,
the latest novel, he kills the main character, and he
yeah.
shows the manuscript. This is before he realizes that she's a complete psycho, and she's like,
Oh,
"No, no, no! You got to rewrite this."
oh my God, Kathy
Actually,
Bates is so good in that.
she actually burns it. She burns the
Yeah,
manuscript.
yeah, yeah. Don't give it away. Don't give it away.
That's the
And
one that
and and Kathy Bates, one of her favorite
yeah,
kitchen utensils is a
absolutely terrifying.
sledgehammer.
That's right. Yeah, and she uses it for an unintended purpose. Let's put it that way.
Woo!
Yeah.
Talk about dislocation of one's ankle.
He
Holy.
didn't get out of the cock-a-doodle car. Yeah, very unhinged.
Oh my God, that is a great one. And I was going to pick that, but I had a feeling. I don't know. I know you better than most, and I'm like-minded minds think alike. I'm going to go in. I only got.
And kudos,
Uh,
kudos to James Caan because he
yeah,
was way down. But they wanted Harrison Ford.
yeah,
I mean, they all turned it down
yeah,
because they thought that his character was weak. And so
yeah.
good for James Caan for stepping up to the plate because he absolutely killed it.
He did, and I actually met James Caan,
Wow.
and he came to our gym. I was working for the Cremitas brothers at a gym downtown Vancouver, and I helped design a micro basketball court in the second
Wow.
level of the gym. It was called God, I forgot the name of the gym. But anyways, he came because a lot of film people would come by and work out and shoot hoops and so on. And Cam was actually a lot smaller than you think. Of course, he was older. He was maybe 5'6", but very, very well spoken and kind.
Oh,
And we
nice.
shot hoops together.
Great
on the
actor.
court that I
Wow,
designed. Yeah,
I
it was
agree.
awesome. And I asked him about that film, and I don't know why I did. I asked him about Godfather, of course, and
Right,
then
right.
about that one. I think the reason why I think that Misery came out literally the same year or the year after that I met him, and very very charming, very kind, and no ego at all. But
Mhm.
apparently in real life, you don't mess with James Caan.
No, he's a manly man for
He
sure.
is. He
He's
is.
certainly projected masculinity on screen. Yeah.
Yeah, and for my next, I've got two more, Johnny. You got one more?
Not- I might have one more. You go.
I,
Oh, I
I
do. I
I'm
have one or two more. I have
I'm
two
just
more.
you have
Okay,
two
cool.
more because we're at
Yeah,
44 minutes. We're
got two
getting up
go.
there.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go off. I'm gonna go back to another Canadian. I'm gonna go back to my favorite Canadian director, and that's David Cronenberg. And I'm gonna go with one of my favorite of his films called Dead Ringers.
Oh, right.
And Elliot, Jeremy Irons, who is absolutely amazing in this, is a very successful gynecologist. I always wondered about that job. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
just weird.
creepy.
Works at the same practice as his identical twin, um, Beverly. Also, Irons. Irons plays both of these characters with such aloof, such calmness, such brilliance. It's incredible. Elliot is attracted to many of his patients and has affairs with them. When he inevitably loses interest, he will give the woman over to Beverly, the meeker of the two, without the women knowing the difference. Beverly falls hard for one of his patients, Claire, Guinevere Bugeaud. Remember her? She was
Yep,
great.
sure. Yep.
And when she inadvertently deceives him, he slips into a state of absolute madness. And this also won the Canadian award, the Genie Award for Best Motion Picture. And, you know, Jeremy Irons, the guy looks like he's been smoking 4 packs of cigarettes since he was 15 years old.
Very
He
gaunt,
doesn't
man.
he doesn't change
Very
at all.
hard, very haunted eyes.
Haunted eyes, and he
Yeah,
doesn't change, and he looks exactly the same the last 50 years.
yeah.
Incredible,
Wow,
incredible movie, incredible performance. I really enjoyed that. Who do you got next,
that's a
Johnny?
good call. Okay, I'm gonna go with let's see, what do we have here? Okay, I'll go with Carrie, another Stephen King book. His first novel that he was working as a school teacher at the time. He
Yeah,
finished Carrie, threw it in the garbage. His wife fished it out. She read it. Tabitha and said, "Hey, what are you doing? This is actually really good." And of course, it was the start of his career.
yeah.
1976, another Brian De Palma classic.
Wow.
Sissy Spacek is a very sweet-natured, nerdy high school girl who
Yeah.
just happens to have telekinesis, which means she can move things with the power of her mind. And she is winds up becoming the date of William Cat. And you remember the ending at the end with the school burning down, and it's a
Yes.
boy, oh boy, actually one of the
Oh,
most terrifying movies ever made.
it really, really well done
Piper
and
Laurie as her Carrie's mother, who's a complete religious wacko.
disturbing.
Yeah.
Disturbing. And at that same time, I was actually going to add another film that was about the same time, and it was Rosemary's Baby
Oh
with
right.
Mia Farrow.
Yeah.
Another really dark film in the 70s, but we only had a certain amount of time, and I
Okay.
want to go to my I'm going to finish off with what I think is probably one of the best horror films I've ever seen, probably the scariest horror film I've ever seen, because it was so long ago that I was very young, and I remember the hair on the back of my neck standing up, and the screaming, and people were throwing up, they were leaving the audience. I saw it in the Stanley,
I know
and
you're going with this.
it was The Exorcist.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And my
People are
God,
fainting.
one of the most profitable horror movies ever made. This tale of the exorcism is loosely based on actual events. When young Regan, an absolutely magnificent Linda Blair, her first film, she was a young lady, 10 years old, 11 years old, starts acting odd, like sort of odd in levitating,
Yeah.
speaking in ancient
Understatement.
evil tongues. Her worried mother, very fantastic, Ellen Bernstein, she was really hot back in the 70s,
Hmm.
seeks medical help only to hit a dead end. A local priest, Jason Miller, who's very good in this,
Hmm.
however, thinks the girl may have been seized by the devil.
For
The
real.
priest makes a request to perform an exorcism, and the church sends in an expert, a fantastic Max von Shadow,
Hmm.
to help with this very difficult job. The director, William Friedkin, just
One of the most
magnificent.
underrated directors of all time. Hardly anybody
Absolutely.
knows who that is, and yet he's made some of the best movies ever made. We talked about that
Absolutely.
guy in LA in the last
In our
podcast.
novel, well, we talked about it in our novels. He's one of
That's
my favorite
correct.
novels. I've read a lot
Yeah,
of his stuff and
just
seen
a
a lot of his movies as well. Yeah.
killer director. Really
Yeah.
great stuff.
And your last one?
Okay, I'll go through this quickly. My last choice is Cloverfield. Again, like the Blair
Oh, I
Witch
love that.
Project, it's shot documentary style, directed by Matt Reeves and written by Drew Goddard. It's basically, for my money, out of all the Godzilla, quote unquote Godzilla type movies that I've seen,
Yeah.
this is the best one. It feels absolutely real. The main character is basically looking for his girlfriend. And if you remember the original trailer for this movie, it was these kids are having a party. It's like a going away party. These teenagers, kids going off to college, and the camera starts shaking, and there are explosions all around, and you see like the head of the Statue of Liberty, falling on Fifth Avenue, and that
That
was
was
the even
great.
no mention of who any credits or what the name of the movie was. Like that was the trailer. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh man, I want to see this movie. It's really short. It's like 70 minutes long.
Yeah.
And some people don't like the shaky cam. Make gives
Yeah.
them makes them nauseous. I don't have
Yeah.
a problem with it at all. I love it because it makes
I
you
do
feel
too. I thought it was
real.
great.
And to me, Cloverfield, like the Blair Witch Project, is like this great fictional
Yeah.
documentary that sucks you right in. It's
I
so
think there was
compelling.
a trilogy of Cloverfield films, and I like all of them.
There was another one. I didn't see the third one. 10 Cloverfield Lane, I believe, was the second one.
Yeah, that
And
was about a
it was also good.
survival bunker.
It was. It was a loosely related sequel, I believe, as I recall, with
Yeah,
John Goodman. Yeah, it mostly takes place in the bunker. Also, a great movie.
yeah, yeah. And John Goodman's it was before he lost all that weight, and he was
Yeah,
crazy, creepy, crazy. It
it
was
was.
awesome. But
Yeah.
Johnny, that was a really good show. We're at just over 51 minutes, and I just wanted to say thanks again for joining me on this journey.
Thank you, sir.
Um,
Always
and
fun.
we're very excited to have 16 episodes. My goodness,
Wow.
and our goal is to get to 100,
The tip of the
and then
iceberg.
yeah, I hope so, and really enjoying it. And Johnny and I just want to say thank you for
Thank
joining
you.
us once again. And please, if you enjoy this type of content and you enjoy our show, our silly little show, we
Give us
really
ideas
appreciate
for
we
topics.
we
We
really
want to see that.
appreciate any comments, any suggestions, any likes.
100%. Yeah.
Hit the notification bell. You can and it will tell you when the next episodes come up. Comment.
Don't be
Um,
afraid to love us.
Yeah,
We need love.
absolutely. There you go. And don't be afraid to also, if you want some constructive criticism, if you would like to say something that perhaps we could do better, we're open to any and all,
Yeah.
positive or negative. This is about learning and growth, and we really enjoy this. It's a lot of fun. It's free.
Thank you so
So
much.
please continue to enjoy. And for all of our friends around the world that have reached out to us, and a lot of my old basketball players and friends in the UK
Yeah, I saw that. That was
have
very
been,
sweet.
yeah. Chris Wright
That
is
was
one of
very
them.
nice.
Chris,
Thank you,
I hope,
Chris. Cheers.
yeah, Chris Wright was. We were teammates with the Newcastle Eagles, and almost joined him at the Worthing Bears with Nick Nurse, who is now in the NBA, the head coach of the Philadelphia 76ers. I should have done that.
Wow. Holy
Uh,
moly.
anyways, but thanks again.
Thank
This
you,
is my name is Paul Bale,
John Leister.
and
Oh, but before we go,
oh,
the most important part of the Canadian Bro Show is Johnny's pun.
pun
So
time.
here we go. A recent study concluded that people have a tendency to get more depressed on weekends because they're Saturdays.
That was pretty good.
Thank
That
you.
was pretty good. That's awesome.
Sure.
All right. So, on behalf of Mr. John Leister, the talented author and writer that he is,
Mm.
and Paul Bale
Here
here,
comes
the
my
founder of the Canadian Bro Show,
thank you, Paul.
thank you for joining us for episode 16, our favorite horror shows. And we look forward to see you next week.
Thank you,
And
everybody. Love you.
thanks again.
Cheers.
And have yourself a great life.
And never be afraid to be yourself. There's only one of you in this
Yeah.
world. So share
As
yourself with the world. Make the world
and
a brighter place by
yeah,
participating.
absolutely, Johnny. And that saying, it's time for us to go, and we'll
Bye.
see you next time. Take care.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.